2 back alley abortionists, and I was almost aborted. For the first, she said it was the typical back alley conditions that you hear about as to why she should have been able to safely and legally abort me. She said there was blood dirt on the floor and on the tables, and those back alley conditions, and the fact that it's illegal caused her to back out, as it did with most women. And then she got hooked up with a more expensive abortionist, once again through the rape counselor that the police had referred her to. She said there were no crisis pregnancy centers back then, but if there had been, she would have gone. She was told, this is what you should do, and wasn't given any other option. For the second, she was to meet someone at night by the Detroit Institute of Art. Someone would approach her, say her name, blindfold her, put her in the back seat of a car, then take her and abort me. Then blindfold her again and drop her back off. And you know what I think is just so pathetic? Is that I know that there's an awful lot of people out there who would hear me describe those conditions and their response would just be, oh, like, it's just so awful that your birth mother should have had to have gone through that in order to have been able to abort you. Oh, like, that's compassionate? Because I realize that they think that they're being compassionate. But that's a pretty cool darker point where I stand. People, their near-death experience is waking up out of a coma to find out that they were almost killed in an automobile accident. For me, this is my near-death experience. And the fact that I was younger doesn't make it any less real or any less significant. Well, she was prepared to go through with it. And the night before, she spoke with this abortion doctor on the phone. And she expressed to him concern for her own safety. She said that she had heard that women's bodies were being dumped. Now, we know from Dr. Bernard Nathanson, who co-founded NARAL, National Abortion Rights Action League. He helped legalize abortion in New York and throughout the rest of the country. He was very active. He personally performed over 5,000 abortions, including one on his own child. And he oversaw over 20,000 abortions in his abortion clinic. He is now pro-life. He went on to become the dean of the OBGYN department at NYU's med school. And that's when ultrasound started coming out in the mid-70s. And he says that you could no longer say that this was just a glob of tissue, because now we have this window into the womb. And he began to have a theory that unborn children actually experience pain. And so he got one of his former colleagues to agree to allow him to perform an ultrasound of an abortion. And that's the movie The Silent Scream, where you literally see her throw her head back, she's dodging that woman, and you see the baby scream out. That colleague of his never performed another abortion again after that. Now, Dr. Bernard Nathanson says that in the late 60s, it was the Vietnam War. He says that these feminists controlled the media, and he said that he and the co-founder of NARAL, made up ridiculous numbers about how many women's bodies were being dumped. He said that everybody knew that it was nowhere near the numbers that were being quoted in the newspaper, but they didn't care, they just printed the numbers that they gave them. He says that today, those numbers that he made up are still being quoted in newspapers today, when it's nowhere near the truth. And he says that today, more women have been killed through legalized abortion than were ever killed through back alley abortions. There's a book called Blind 5 that details many of these abortions. There's also the Blackman Wall that you can find on Life Dynamics website. I've read that book cover to cover. It was a tough read. Just one case after another, from the newspaper clippings, the legal cases, and the medical examiners, board of medical examiners cases where women were harmed from legalized abortion. But my birth mother heard these rumors, and she was concerned for her own safety. This abortion doctor called her stupid, and she said, okay, that's it, call me names, all right, I'm not doing this. Well, then he went on to swear at her profusely, and then she just finally hung up the phone on him. The next day, he called her back to try to talk her into allowing him to take my life. And again, the same thing transpired. He called her stupid and went on to swear at her. I can't even tell you what it feels like to know somebody wanted to take my life so badly that he would even call back the next day. And then after that, she was then into her second trimester. It would have been a far more expensive, more dangerous abortion. Now, if your birth mother chose life for you, how nice for you. It must feel wonderful to know that you were wanted like that. But my birth mother did not choose life for me. She chose abortion. Pro-life advocates chose life for me, and I owe my life to them. And that is why I, in turn, do the same for others. Well, then I'd have classmates say things to me like, oh, well, if you had been aborted, you wouldn't be here today, and you wouldn't know the difference anyway, so what does it matter? And believe it or not, some of the top pro-abortion philosophers use the same kind of argument that the fetus never knows what hits them, so there's no such fetus to miss their lives. Like, I guess as long as you stab someone in the back while they're sleeping, well then it's okay because they don't know what hits them. And I'd explain to them how their same logic would justify me killing you today because you wouldn't be here tomorrow and you wouldn't know the difference anyway, so what does it matter? And they just stand there with their jaws dropped like, gee, it's amazing what even just a little bit of logic can do when you really think this thing through and what we're really talking about. That there are lives who are not here today because they were aborted. And it's like the old saying, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a noise? Well, duh, yeah. And if a baby is a boy and no one else is around to know about it, does it matter? And the answer is, yeah. Their lives matter. My life matters. Your lives matter. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The world is a different place because it was illegal for my birth mother to abort me back then. Your lives are different because she could not legally abort me, because you're sitting here listening to me tonight. Because we don't have to have an impact on audiences for your life to matter. And there is something that we are all missing here today because of the generations now. Your generation who has been aborted, and it matters. And then there's people who would say, well, don't you think it's a bit extreme to tell a woman who's been raped that she should be forced to carry that child? And I say to them, well, I think it's a bit extreme to tell another human being that they're garbage, that they were disposable, that they weren't worthy of protection, that they didn't deserve to live. I think that's a bit extreme, don't you? And then I was so frustrated in law school with people who would say things like, well, I don't think God out in the Bible is like, I'm pro-choice. As if there's no other rational justification for the pro-life position. So I wrote a 43-page essay, The Right of the Unborn Child Not to Be Unjustly Killed, a philosophy of rights approach. I took all the top pro-abortion philosophers, found their arguments, showed the error in their logic. It's a very sound document. I have it available on my website, which is RebeccaKiessling.com. If you can't remember how to spell my last name, you can just Google pro-life speaker, and it's the first site to come up, or you can Google philosophical abortion essay, and it'll be the first site to come